everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Director's Cut. I'm Drew Fry, along with my co-host Jackson Kinney, and joining us today, we have none other than Patrick Fletchall from the IU men's tennis team himself. And in case you haven't guessed it, today's topic, we are discussing tennis, something close to my heart. I'm assuming along with Patrick as well. So we're going to have a fun show today, just talking about getting tennis back in the swing of everything. No pun intended there.
Let's say, did you plan that? How long have you been thinking about that?
I didn't plan that one, actually. That one just sort of came out. It's in my blood at this point. But yeah, professional tennis has been back for a little while, just in different stages. We've had several exhibition tournaments popping up as the Australian Open kicked off earlier in the year. French Open has been postponed to September, October. US Open is still planning to go in September, and Wimbledon was canceled for the first time since World War II. So coronavirus took a big toll on the Pro Tour, but players trying to get back professionally, no points involved, no money involved. But I know one of the big storylines, and Patrick, I'm curious as to your opinions on how this all played out, was the Adria Tour, which took place in Serbia, hosted by Novak Djokovic and his coach, Goran Ivanisevic, along with several top 10 players. And then they did have a coronavirus outbreak there. One of the keys was they didn't enact social distancing. They all played together, but they were playing in an environment that had been okayed by the Serbian government and several tennis officials. So, Patrick, I'll start with you. They've taken a lot of criticism for maybe being reckless, for not being as careful about letting this virus go. At the same time, didn't technically break any rules. Do you think that overall it's a bad look for the tennis community, or do you think it's just an unfortunate event that we'll move on from?
I mean, the thing about the whole Djokovic thing was Djokovic taking such criticism as when the U.S. Open said that they were going to come back, saying that there was no way he was going to come to the United States and play due to the coronavirus and stuff. But at the same time, there was videos surfacing on Twitter of Djokovic and the rest of the guys partying. And there was a video of them with their shirts off, touching each other, just drinking away and just not doing anything safety wise to prevent and stay social distance. So I think as far as the tennis went, they did a good job of kind of social distancing. But I think when they all got tested and tested positive, I think that was probably because of the more off-court stuff that they were doing, because like I said, they were partying off the court and not following those certain rules that were necessary. So I think from the tennis aspect, though, I think they did a good job, and I think it was just unfortunate, and I think it's definitely tough seeing the number one player in the world testing positive, along with the other guys that were on the tour with them that were just as good. But yeah, I think a big thing that people missed out was the off-court stuff that they were doing, and I think a lot of people were blaming it more on the tennis, and I don't even think that was as much of the problem as the partying off the court was.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. We saw those videos surface. Sasha Zverev has gotten a lot of heat too. As he said, he made a comment, I'm going to quarantine, I'm going to isolate myself, and then 5 days later, another video surfaced of him out partying as well. So a lot of the off the court stuff has been issues. Why do you think there's such a response with all of these players? When you see several of these top guys, I don't know. I mean, do you think they're role models in a way? Zverev's the top German player. I know Isner's taken some heat about the tournament he hosted in Atlanta. He's the top American male player.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's a little bit of a factor, seeing some of these role models as the world is trying to get everyone to sort of calm down, take a step back, and be more safe?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, these top guys are the only ones that are able to play in these events right now. You're not seeing these guys that are 300, 400 in the world playing right now in these exhibitions. No one's really wanting to watch them play. So when you're having Djokovic play and Dimitrov and Zverev play, you're obviously hoping that they're doing everything everyone else in the world's doing, and social distancing and taking all the cautionary steps to trying to prevent the virus. But I mean, when you see them doing off-court stuff and not maybe taking it as seriously as other people, I think it's definitely for the people that are looking up to them. I think it's just a bad look on them, in my opinion. But I mean, I mean, it's just tough. Like, obviously, when you're like the best player in the world of your sport, like you're gonna get heat no matter what you do. But I think just some of the things that like Djokovic did in particular could have been avoided, and it would have looked better upon himself.
Yeah.
Right. And you mentioned Djokovic has been called reckless for it. He totally earned that with all this stuff he's been doing. And I don't necessarily, I don't think it gives a bad look to the tennis community as it's in its own. I know that's something you were worried about, Drew, but it definitely doesn't look good. But when you have the other players in the world, the players based in other countries that are actually taking this seriously and trying to prepare for these big tournaments coming up if they're going to participate, I think that reflects more on the community itself than Djokovic and his friends just partying.
Yeah, I know. I've seen Nadal, who's been very, vocal. He's up there with Djokovic, about trying to be careful. He's very hesitant about the U.S. Open. One of the comments he made a couple months ago was he said, "If things don't change in the U.S. as of today, I don't see myself playing." I think that was more of a call to action of trying to regulate safety precautions. I still anticipate Nadal showing up, largely because it's one of the 4 biggest tournaments in the world, and in the span of a month, he could tie and pass Federer's Grand Slam record. He's sitting at 19 now. Federer's at 20, and Federer's out for the season. So Nadal has a lot to gain from these coming months if he's able to play. But yeah, I've been very interested to see players like Nick Kyrgios, and I was talking to Jackson before we joined, who, I mean, this time last year was one of the most controversial players in a way. I mean, you loved him, you hated him, you loved to hate him, you hated to love him. I don't know which one it was, but it was one of those for everyone. And now it's almost like he's become the voice of reason in tennis. He stepped up during the Australian wildfires. He's stepping up and being vocal about the coronavirus outbreak. It's been interesting to see his reputation just sort of take a 180, it seems.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I just think with Nick, he just doesn't care what people think about him, which is, I mean, a good thing because, I mean, he's taking shots at Boris Becker and he's taking shots at Djokovic, and he's done this all throughout his career. Like, he hasn't cared about, he doesn't care about what people think about him. Like, he's going to go out there and be the same Nick Kyrgios day in and day out. And, I mean, I think from like my perspective and like all my buddies and stuff, like, we love watching him play. Like, he just brings a different like vibe to the game of tennis that like I think it's been missing. And I think he's brought in a lot of viewers. Like, I remember I was seeing a statistic last year. I think he was playing in Cincinnati. He's playing on like a grandstand court and like playing as like a nobody. And he brought it, and like it was overflowing. Just like everyone wants to watch him play because you just don't know what you expect out of him. And I think he's just I think he's good to the game in the way. I mean, there's some things that like obviously he's done that has caused such like discrepancies. But I mean, at the same time, I think he has produced a lot of money for like the ATP and has brought in a lot of viewership to the sport of tennis. So I think, I mean, he's going to say what he wants, and I think that's what people got to realize. And I mean, he's got every right to talk right now towards Djokovic and stuff. So I think he's socially distancing and he's taking everything that's necessary. He's taking it to heart. So I think he's doing a good job with that. And I personally love him. So, I mean, but yeah, I mean, he's different though.
Mm-hmm. I think with Kyrgios, the best comparison I can make in my mind are some of the baseball players in the MLB who are bat flipping and talking trash to the pitchers and trying to bring in a younger energy to the game. And Kyrgios is trying to do that in my mind. And it makes it more appealing to a younger generation, the kids coming up who might not be into tennis, but then they see a Kyrgios highlight on ESPN and he's doing his thing, running his mouth, just being himself. And they go, wow, tennis actually looks kind of fun. And athletes like that are going to be really important going forward. So Kyrgios, I mean, he's gotten me more interested in tennis. Yeah. So, I mean, athletes like him and Kyrgios himself are really important. And it's really cool to see him step up now between the wildfires earlier this year and the pandemic and being an example in the world of tennis.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's good to see him sort of he got the viewership. He drew that attention, and that's what people liked, and that's something that the sport needs. And now he's able to like showcase that other side. Patrick, to what you were talking about, I was at the Western and Southern Open for one of the early days last year, and I just remember he was on a practice court with Tsitsipas. It was just the two of them hitting around, and then they were playing like an exhibition tiebreak, and Kyrgios like threw his racket across the court in the middle of a tiebreak, an exhibition tiebreak. But it was fun, and I remember he was also wearing a Boston Celtics jersey while playing, which was great. Yeah. But I remember the guy in front of me, and he was like a middle-aged man. He was standing in front of me because it was really hard to see because there were so many people watching his practice.
Yep.
And yeah, the middle-aged in front of me made some comment after Kyrgios like threw a racket or hit a ball, and he's just like, "Oh gosh, I hate this guy. He's such a jerk." And I'm sitting here, I'm like, "You're standing watching him practice.
You're
So
watching.
how much do you, right? Like how much do you hate him?"
Exactly.
Yeah. No, he's a fun addition to the sport, and yeah, I think it's good to see he's sort of garnering some of the respect that some people may have lost for him earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But something else I wanted to talk about, and Patrick, I know you touched on this earlier. In the sport of tennis, it doesn't seem as difficult as many other high contact sports might be to social distance, to be safe on the court.
Mm-hmm.
I know down in Florida, Riley Opelka and some of his buddies, hosted some exhibitions down there where they used their own specific tennis balls. They had no line judges on the court, just one chair umpire, racket taps instead of handshakes. I've seen fist bumps as well. And then I also know you've been able to play some exhibition stuff in the middle of this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think are some of these precautions that tennis can take? I mean, do you think that maybe like the racket click, doing away with the handshake might stick? But also, like, why is it easier to get tennis up and running than it would be with several of these other sports where it's testing 2 times or once every other day?
Yeah, I mean, tennis itself is a very like individualized sport, and besides doubles, but even doubles, you can pretty much stay pretty far away from your partner. But I think, like you said about the like handshake, I think that's going to be gone for forever. I hope so. I don't particularly care for the handshake. Like the worst thing is when you lose and you got to give that guy a handshake. I just don't like that. I think the racket touch is a good idea, and that way prevent germs and stuff. But at the same time, I think, yeah, I mean the balls, keeping your own balls is a good idea, especially like now during this. And then I know some of these exhibitions are doing without line judges, so I think a lot of these pros are having to make their own calls, which is I guess is good too. They haven't done that in a while, but I think just like the small things that like people don't think about, like that are like gifted to them, like in like the pros, and like even myself, like through college tennis, that like I was like I'm blessed with. That we don't have anymore because it's like like for precautionary reasons. I think they should stick a little bit longer because even like through the pandemic, because I think it's just a good way to prevent germs and keep everyone safe in general.
All right, and
Yeah.
the event you played in earlier this summer, what were the precautions there? Like what were they putting in? And that to me is interesting because that's more of a regional thing, and I think that's going to be more prominent than say the ATP guidelines for just like the majority of people playing the game. So like, what were the guidelines you had to follow when you played in the charity event?
So all the people running the event were definitely masks, and there was one. I think there was one line judge for like there were 6 courts. He was in a mask. They made sure that we were 6 feet from each person sitting down at changeovers and stuff. Scorecards were non-existent. Didn't want us touching those. We had several balls. What else did we do? There was actually a doubles tournament. Weren't allowed to touch your partner's hand. If you like give them a high five and they saw it, they were going to give you a point penalty. So that was like a big thing to try and prevent that. But I think they did an excellent job of keeping everyone away from each other. And I mean, it's tough, obviously, to watch. I mean, there's 128 guys there, so it's hard to. But I think they did an excellent job. And but yeah, I think the small things that we don't think about play a big role.
Mm-hmm.
I was always fascinated by that idea of like things that outside of this, like during the sport, but not directly involved in that you can or can't do. Like, yeah, like a point penalty for high fives. I just think that's I understand why it's in place. It just seems such like an odd set of circumstances. I know baseball, is talking about fining pitchers who spit onto the mound. And it just seems like such a weird, like there's small parts of the game that we now have to adjust and now actually have to take action to adjusting because of this pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's weird to think about, but it's necessary during these times.
Yeah. And I also want to point out, because I just feel like we haven't at least we should at least mention it. In that doubles exhibition that you got to play in, your doubles partner was Rajiv Ram, who's top 10 doubles player in the world. And the way I look at it, he's the last one of two of the last men to win a Grand Slam title. He won the 2020 Australian Open with his doubles partner, and there has been no Grand Slam since.
Yeah.
So what was that experience like for you, being able to stand there on the court and your teammate being one of, if not the best doubles player in the entire world?
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, I've known Rajiv for a little bit of time now. I've practiced with him periodically. But, I mean, anytime I go out there and play a competitive match with someone like that, I learn a lot. And he was teaching me a lot of things that I didn't know about the game and trying to help me along the way throughout, like, the morning warm-up and throughout the match as well. I mean, I just got to take a lot of pointers from him and how he carries out his time as being a pro. And he was talking to me about, like, what he does throughout tournaments to kind of stay healthy, and like what he's doing now, especially because during these times and how he's kind of adjusted to his training schedules and stuff. So I think it was definitely a great learning experience for me, and because I got to learn a lot of stuff. But yeah, it's awesome. He's a great guy, and it was a lot of fun to play with him.
Yeah. And speaking of opportunities to train, that's another thing that I know has been discussed in the return of tennis. Is there have been several players who can just jump right back in the swing of things, Djokovic, Isner, Opelka, and that group. But there have also been some people who are still stuck at home, they're quarantined, they're social distancing. I remember one player making the comment, it was one of the women's players, I don't remember who, but she said, it was like mid-June, and she's like, I just got a set of weights for my house so that I can continue training in that fashion. So once we get back into, I know the Western and Southern Open has been moved to New York, and then the U.S. Open will also be in New York as well. Do you think there's going to be a big disparity between some of these players who want to be able to play these big tournaments but haven't played in months?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be. There's gonna be a lot of upsets. There's gonna be a lot of. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, besides the top guys, Nadal's somewhat hitting, not very. I mean, I think he just started kind of hitting again, but I mean. I know like Djokovic now, I mean, he's been quarantined for 2 weeks, so he had to take off that time. But I mean, I don't know about these guys that are like 50s to 100s. You're not hearing a ton about them. But like, you just don't know. I think people are going to be rusty. They haven't played a tournament in forever. So, I mean, it's different from playing a practice match than an actual competitive, like Grand Slam tour level match. So I think there's going to be it's going to be different than what we usually see. It might be the top guys again at the top, but at the same time, you might see one of these younger next gen guys break through here and maybe steal this U.S. Open this year.
Yeah, and that actually leads perfectly into another question that I had. And Jackson, I know this applies to a lot of other sports too, but just as a little background, obviously players who have expressed concerns about the U.S. Open, and I've got a list here. We've got Nadal, Kyrgios, Kyle Edmund. He says he plans on playing in it, but he's not happy. Yeah. Petra Kvitova, Belinda Bencic, Ash Barty, Simona Halep's already withdrawn. And we know Federer won't be playing anyways. So there's the possibility, especially if things in New York get worse in terms of containing this outbreak, there's a possibility that a lot of top players won't be able to compete. Mm-hmm. If we get a U.S. Open like that, one maybe without Nadal, obviously without Federer, if, say, Dominic Thiem tests positive right before, if we lose a lot of these top guys, do you think that the winner may be sort of delegitimized?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not sure that I think it's still going to be a guy who's very prevalent in the top rankings that's going to win because, I mean, they're just more experienced. I think especially going to play like a U.S. Open or something like a Grand Slam, you got 7 matches, 3 out of 5 sets. Most people aren't used to that. So I think it's still going to be someone who's kind of experienced in that way. But I don't personally think it'll be a top dog this year. I think maybe like a Tsitsipas can come in and win it. I mean, he's definitely shown that he can play with the top dogs.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, someone like him of his caliber can come in, and I think this is the year to do it, especially since, I mean, there's definitely people that are like borderline going to play, going to not play. There's going to be people that haven't been practicing. So I think it's going to be a shock to see. You're not going to wake up on Instagram and see that Novak Djokovic maybe not won his 20th Grand Slam or whatever it is, and Nadal, blah, 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 making all these records. You might see first-time Grand Slam champion this year. I think that might be a new headline. So you never know, though. I mean, Djokovic and Nadal are still so good, even if they probably don't pick up a racket. But, I think, in my opinion, I think it'll be someone new this year.
Mhm.
Yeah, the Tsitsipas is a good pick, and I just remember Medvedev almost won it last year.
About him, yeah. I
Yeah,
haven't heard much about him. I don't know what he's been up to.
yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't heard much from most of the Russian players. I know Rublev was playing in the Adria Tour,
Yeah.
because his finals match was canceled against Djokovic. But other than that, haven't heard much out of that side of the world.
Exactly. Yep.
And you mentioned, just because we've had this talk before with other sports, the legitimacy of winning a title with obviously the biggest stars out. I think in this case, it doesn't matter because the prestige of the event overtakes anybody playing in it. It's the U.S. Open. And in tennis, it's, like you said, it's the Grand Slam event. So I think whoever wins, if it is a surprise winner, they can still say they won a U.S. Open. And they won the U.S. Open. It's not different. I think the prestige of the event just speaks for itself. It's like if Tiger Woods, Phil Mickelson, and the best golfers, maybe 5 out of the top 10 in the world, didn't play in the Masters, and a surprise wins the Masters. They still won the Masters, I mean,
Yep.
I think it's kind of that same thing where you win the U.S. Open, you've won the U.S. Open or any other Grand Slam event.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. At least from the player's perspective, they won that title. They're going to celebrate that. I also think it might be something I just thought of. It might be a little different looking at the men's side of the draw versus the women's side, because in terms of men's Grand Slam tournaments, it's largely been Nadal, Djokovic, Federer for the past 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
There have been very few players, maybe 5 players outside of that group to win.
Yeah.
Murray and Wawrinka each have a few.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there really isn't much. On the women's side, though, I mean, there's probably been out of the last 12 Grand Slams, there's probably been 10 different winners.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So, it would be interesting to see if someone like Tsitsipas or Thiem or Medvedev ends up breaking through and wins this U.S. Open, to see if that group is able to then win the French and then come back and win the Australian. And this could be the start of the dethroning of the big 3.
Right. And I think it's another thing for the sport. It's going to be a good thing to get some of these lesser known names out there and exposed. So as a casual fan turning on the U.S. Open, might only know Nadal and Federer and Djokovic. But then they get to see names like Medvedev and other names they don't know out there on the court. And then they're introduced to them and they're more interested in the game because, okay, there's more than just the big 3 out there, and they put on a really entertaining show. Yep. So I think for the sport in general, it's a great opportunity to get younger names and lesser known names exposure on a big stage.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, and definitely, especially with the age group, because Nadal, Djokovic, and Federer all, in their 30s at this point and have been around for the past 20 years, and they have historic legacies, and people appreciate that. But at the same time, the amount of support that Coco Gauff was able to rally in the United States, and part of it, that's an extreme circumstance, is she's, winning tournaments at 15 years old. But people care. I know I watched Cici Bellis in her first Grand Slam when she was 14 or 16, and I remember that because I am the same age as Cici Bellis. So I remember watching that at home in high school, just being like, what is going on? So I definitely think there's some value in that. And then that leads into another thought, and Patrick, I want to hear your thoughts first, of that new wave of players. Because the big 3, it seems like they'll be around forever, but they probably won't. Yeah. Of that new wave of players on the men's side, who do you think are going to be our next stars?
All the next gen guys, they can play the sport. They can go out. Tsitsipas has shown it. He's won a Masters 1000. Kyrgios, when he's on, he can be lights out. He's got a winning record against the big 3. Rublev can Rublev can go out there and play. I mean, there's a young American too right now that's kind of coming up. He's the same age as me. His name's Brandon Nakashima. People don't really know about him a whole lot right now because he hasn't been able to this year was kind of his year to start playing those kind of like 250 kind of level tournaments and stuff, but he wasn't able to do that. But he just played the exhibition down in Miami that I think JC Aragoni put on. He beat a top guy very easily. So you just don't know. I mean, I think it's like I said. I think it's tough for a Brandon Nakashima to go in there and just like sweep everything away, especially on the men's side. You see it a little bit more on the women's side, but I think it's just way more physical and demanding to go in and match up like day in and day out and do the same thing. So I think I like Tsitsipas or those kind of guys have more experience and they've been around it for a little bit longer. So I think you're going to see a definite jump from those guys this year, like a Felix or Denis Shapovalov. Yeah, I think you're going to see a huge jump this year, this upcoming year, hopefully, if everything goes according to plan. And their names are going to start popping up everywhere. And I think the big three is kind of maybe it might be on the downfall. Who knows? I mean, they're still so good, so you just don't know. I mean, Federer's upwards to 40 years old right now, and is still rock solid. But yeah, I think the young guys have a shot, and I think they're gonna use it to the best of their opportunity.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Shapovalov because he's a player that I've been a big fan of for a little while now. I actually remember watching him in Cincinnati too. He was on a practice court. And his coach or his hitting partner, I don't remember which, was just hitting him balls. And he was just like destroying them with pure like force topspin and placing them like right on the lines. And at one point he turned to his coach and just said like, yep, it's one of those days. And then a couple hours later, he went out and demolished Kyle Edmund, in his second round match. So when he's on, his stroke is just incredible.
Yeah.
Another guy I want to mention, because I've been watching him a little bit as well, and I've heard several players talk about how like they're sort of afraid to play him, is Alex de Minaur. He's a young Australian. The Australians are just getting good because you've also got Alexei Popyrin down there. So Australian tennis is really on the rise with these young guys led by Kyrgios.
Yeah.
And then I think in terms of replacing the big three, if they eventually fall, and that's still a big if, but I've heard Dominic Thiem be dubbed as the Prince of Clay, as Nadal is the King of Clay.
Yeah.
And I think Thiem I think Thiem stands a legitimate shot of winning this French Open. I think he might be the first guy to win a French Open after Nadal.
Yeah.
So a very good group. And then to flip over to the women's side a little bit, for the longest time it was Serena. Before that it was Venus. I mean, the Williams sisters have dominated. And there have been several players who hang around the top five fairly regularly. Muguruza, Kerber, Halep, that group.
Mm-hmm.
But the women's side has definitely been a lot more fluid with who's hot, who's up in the rankings, and who's struggling. So right now, Serena hasn't won a Grand Slam in a while. Mm-hmm. And it just seems like a bunch of new names are popping up and doing it, whether it's Osaka, Cannon in this last Australian Open. Do you see someone on the women's side who could step into that role that Serena used to be in? Do you think Serena's going to come back and dominate for another 5-10 years? Or do you think we're going to get more of the same?
I mean, I think it's tough to say someone's going to be the same level as Serena.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just like in general, I don't think we're going to see a women's player particularly just going out there and sweeping Grand Slams left and right, just like winning them repeatedly. I mean, they're just not the same level as Serena was in her prime. I mean, Serena can still go out there and win the Grand Slam now, like even though she's getting up there in age and stuff and has a kid now. But she's still a phenomenal player. And I think, there's some players you got Halep, who's very consistent in her tournaments. Like, she's not one that just goes out and could lose first round and go win a Grand Slam. She's going to be consistent. She's going to be fighting for every title. But it's more up in the air on the women's side as to who's going to win a title. But I just don't think anyone's going to come anywhere close to Serena in her prime or Venus in her prime. So, yeah, it's tough to judge now. But Coco Gauff, very solid player. That's young American. So she's shown success on the Pro Tour. So maybe she can make that jump. But it's just tough to to call it right now, since there hasn't been anyone who's really stood out in my opinion, as a real contender for winning multiple Grand Slams.
Yeah, it's getting up to that level that Serena was at is going to be hard, if even possible, to match.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think it's really nice to see that, the Williams sisters in particular really paving the way for a new batch of young American talent.
Yep.
With American women have regularly over these past 20 years been a lot stronger at the top of their game than the American men, and so it's nice to see that new wave of American women coming in, whether it be Kennan. Sloane Stephens won a Grand Slam title earlier. I know she struggled this year. Madison Keys is up at that level, and now you've got Coco Gauff, who could be the next big thing. It'll be interesting to see how she pans out. But so a lot to look forward to, and then obviously after the U.S. Open, we'll get into the French Open, assuming everything goes well. But a lot of tennis left to be played, assuming everything works out. That's all I have in terms of questions, discussion topics. But Patrick, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you.
And hope that you're able to still get some tennis in, stay into your game. I don't know how much you've been able to play as of late.
Yeah, that's kind of one thing I was curious about. I didn't know if we had time, but just what are you doing to stay sharp and on your game while this is all happening?
Yeah, I mean, I've been kind of hitting in a group class that just started back up last week. I mean, we're very, very careful about making sure we're staying socially distanced, and I think our coaches are excellent with that. We have a couple coaches that are definitely very cautious about it, and I think there's a couple college guys in the class, a couple incoming freshmen that are coming to IU that are hitting with us too. But I think it's been good. We go for a couple hours a day, and then everything else is kind of on our own. And so, it's been good. I've been able to hit pretty much every day. So it's not like I've been lacking not being able to practice, but it's definitely different without the tournaments kind of slowed down this summer. You don't have as many at all. And but I think it's been good. I mean, just going out there sometimes with my friends and taking just doing everything necessary to kind of stay in shape and just kind of keep working on my game a little bit during this time.
Yeah. No, I've just been wondering because I didn't know if they were bringing the tennis athletes back soon, or I didn't know how they were going to do that with some of the.
We're not allowed to come back until we're not allowed to come back till late August. So it's all on ourselves where we live. So
all right, that's all I really had. Like Drew said, thank you so much for coming on and taking some time out of your day.
Yeah, for sure. No, that was awesome. Thank you guys.
Yeah, good luck down the line with tennis, whatever capacity you're able to play it in the near future, and then of course in the extended future as well. And make sure you stay safe.
Yep.
For Jackson Kenny, I'm Drew Fry. Thank you everybody else for watching. We're so glad you could join us, and we will see you next time.